I am continuing in my reading. What I'm doing in this series is to read through the entire standard works of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This consists of the Bible, the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, and the Pearl of Great Price. I am continuing reading in a chronological order, according to event, not according to publication or volume. So I'm skipping around a bit as I move along. I'm going to continue reading in the Gospels again. This is, of course, Christ is still in Galilee. This is where his ministry is focused, because people in Jerusalem still want to kill him. We read a lot of discourses, a lot of miracles. The feeding of the 4,000 was one of the more recent ones. We read about Peter's testimony, thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God, and the keys of the kingdom. And most recently, we read both in Matthew and Mark the story of the Mount of Transfiguration, where Moses and Elijah appear to restore their keys in that dispensation. Now we're going to read this story again in Luke, but before we continue, I would like to mention there was an accident just out front of where we live, and two cars, one backing out of a driveway, the other coming up a blind hill, rammed into each other, and the fire truck and police cars are out there. You may hear that in the background, but I'm running out of time today, so I want to keep filming anyways. Just wanted to let you know what's going on there. In this video, we have a Joseph Smith translation. And what the Joseph Smith translation is, this is a translation or correction done by Joseph Smith to restore those passages that have been lost or corrupted over the years. So let us turn to Luke. This will be chapter 9, verses 28 through 36. And it came to pass, about 8 days after these sayings, he took Peter and John and James and went up into a mountain to pray. And as he prayed, the fashion of his countenance was altered, and his raiment was white and glistening. And behold, there talked with him 2 men, which were Moses and Elias, who appeared in glory, and spake of his decease, which he should accomplish at Jerusalem. But Peter and they that were with him were heavy with sleep. And when they were awake, they saw his glory and the 2 men that stood with him. And it came to pass, as they departed from him, Peter said unto Jesus, Master, it is good for us to be here. And let us make 3 tabernacles, one for thee, and one for Moses, and one for Elias, not knowing what he said. While he thus spake, there came a cloud, and overshadowed them, and they feared as they entered into the cloud. Then there came a voice out of the cloud, saying, This is my beloved Son, hear him. And when the voice was past, Jesus was found alone, and they kept it close, and told no man in those days any of those things which they had seen. Now this is just odd. Remember, Mark says it was 6 days later, and this says it's 8 days, so the timing, there's a little discrepancy there, nothing important. But Luke here is saying that these men were all asleep, and woke up because, they went up to the mountain, and they were all dozing off, and then, whoa, vision, wow, what's going on? If that's accurate, then, I can understand their fear. They're still a bit groggy from sleep, apparently. That just sounds hilarious to me for some reason. But other than that, there's really nothing new. It's a very condensed version of the story. I do find it interesting that Matthew and Mark both say he was transfigured. They use that term. But Luke doesn't. He says his countenance was changed. It means the same thing. But Matthew and Mark are both Jewish. They are of Israel. And so the idea of transfiguration would have been familiar to them. Luke is not. He's a Greek. And so he's explaining it the best way he can. I find that interesting. But let us take a look at the Joseph Smith translation. In 28, it now reads, And it came to pass 8 days after these sayings that he took Peter and John and James. So much more similar. That it made no sense. And it came to pass about 8 days later. That just makes no sense. So we correct the grammar. So no change in meaning, but it definitely reads better. Verse 29 is interesting as well. Now reads this. And as he prayed, the fashion of his countenance was changed, and his raiment became white and glittering. It doesn't really change the meaning, but it's an interesting, the wording is somewhat better, in my opinion. Now in verse 30, it says, And behold, there talked with him 2 men, which were Moses and Elias. And the Joseph Smith translation simplifies this. And behold, there came and talked with him 2 men, even Moses and Elias. So when they woke up, Jesus was already transfigured, but Moses and Elias were not yet there. They woke up to see Moses and Elias arriving. That's interesting. Verse 31, Instead of spake of his decease, it is spake of his death and also his resurrection, clarifying that. And verse 32, the two, that were with him and then that stood by him are both changed to who were with him and who stood with him. Verse 33, instead of and it came to pass as they departed, it says, and after the two men departed from him. So this clarifies that it is not Peter, James, and John who are departing, but it is Moses and Elias who are departing. And then a little later on, just remove the word and, so let us make 3 tabernacles. In verse 34, and overshadowed them, we have and overshadowed them all. So everybody is being overshadowed by the cloud. And then 36 is rendered in this way, and when the voice was past, Jesus was found alone. And these things they kept close, and they told no man in those days any of the things which they had seen. Minor grammatical updates and clarifications. Kind of common in the New Testament, it seems, but we leave that here. And in our next reading, we are going to be reading for our next several videos in multiple Gospels. So I will see you there.